You're watching NDTV Hindu.
Hello and welcome to SL Chennai Speaks Out. A heart attack at 25. Shocking? Not really if you go by the chronic complaints by many young executives pointing to a complete lack of work-life balance. The I'm available 24/7 is no longer a badge of honor in corporate India. Even corporate CEOs are beginning to bear the brunt of stress. Just recently, Ranjan Das of a leading corporate house died of a heart attack at 42. Now, most of his colleagues say he was the most unlikely candidate for a heart attack and a cardiac problem because he used to never miss his workouts, he used to have a healthy diet, but he didn't have enough sleep. So who is responsible for burnout in the corporate world, bosses or employees? To discuss this, we've got Latha, who's the director of MAFOI, Dr.N.Rangarajan, psychiatrist, well-known psychiatrist in the city. We've got Mr. Vivek Harinarain, an outstanding IAS officer of the Tamil Nadu government, now a corporate bigwig, in fact, advisor of the Marg group, and Devendra Saharia, president of Ajuba. We've got a whole lot of HR professionals here in the audience, the part of the jury. We've got a young entrepreneur. We've got various young executives from IT companies. I would say some of them perhaps have already begun to sniff out symptoms of burnout. Without much ado, let's get started. Devendra, if I can come to you first. Impossible deadlines, is that one of the reasons why young executives burn out? You're actually asking them to sprint when they should actually be focusing on a marathon.
Deadlines are a way of life in the corporate world today, and impossible deadlines, I don't think that that's the norm. I mean, there may be occasional situations where there are tight deadlines one has to work towards, but by and large, well-run companies have very strong processes, very strong project management skills, and deadlines are all agreed to not only by the company, but all the stakeholders, the customers, the employees.
Latha, as somebody who's in the business of recruitment, we've seen high attrition rates. Now, do you think youngsters today are actually guilty of poor time management, which is why many of them carry work home when there's perhaps no need to do that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sanjay. I think like today, most of the employees work almost 14 to 15 hours. They're in fact wedded to the company and to their bosses more than their spouses. So that's the situation today. And I think so the need for recognition, or I've heard people saying like, I would like my boss to just like acknowledge me, smile at me. And many of these things become so important because of these long hours and things like that.
You believe that's not happening?
Not so much, because the boss himself or herself is really tied up with so many things that many a times they don't even acknowledge the person's presence when they walk in that way. So, many of these things just add up, and this 6-letter word, which is the most spoken about today, stress. Even doctors, when we go today, like, the easiest thing is to say it's all because of stress.
Take vitamin pills, pop a few vitamin pills and you'll be fine.
It's the easiest thing to say, like, anything you say, like, it starts because of stress.
In the West, they have this procedure of 360-degree assessments where an official, a higher official, his performance hinges on the actual output of his subordinates.
Good old times, what used to be happening is that they used to take a goat and the entire village would gather around the goat and lay their hands. It's biblical. They would lay their hands on the goat and transfer their sins on the goat, and then the goat would be allowed to go out into the desert, and hence the word came scapegoat. I think today bosses have become those goats. Everybody is trying to pass off their sin by just placing their hands on the boss and saying, okay, you go out into the desert, you are responsible for all that's happening to us. I don't think that's the case. So I very strongly don't agree with what she's talking about, stress and boss-related stress.
Okay, Dr. Rangarajan, bosses are not to be made sacrificial lambs, is what Mr. Harinarain says.
Oh, well, but it's the boss who actually tells these guys to. I mean, he's the guy who sets the
who's holding the whip.
Absolutely. He sets the expectations going there. And everybody kind of believes they have to do this because the boss wants this. And the boss doesn't come out and say, okay, man, cool, I'm not expecting this much. I mean, the boss is happy. You give me more, I'm happy, if that's the case.
Doc, physical fitness of employees. Some of them, we are told they don't eat right. eat a lot of junk food.
Oh, yes.
You have food courts in IT companies. There are also gyms. Most IT companies have gyms which are not used.
Not used at
so
all.
it's a chicken or the egg proposition. They are not able to combat stress because they are physically weak, or are they hit by stress because of work pressure?
Look, this word stress, basically, stress is not bad. We need stress. I mean, if you don't stress me, I don't do very well. I mean, I need to be under stress.
But how much stress is
Oh,
okay?
yeah, exactly. I need to know how much I can take it. You know, that particular level I got to find out, and I do that by experience, everyday work. See, being my own boss, I set my own limit. I say, this is it. I'm not seeing any more today, or I'm taking today off. I'm going to plan for a holiday
As
next
a professional,
week.
you can do it, but I don't think they can do it.
Exactly.
I mean, those who are employed
exactly.
somewhere, if you have a
When
boss.
when somebody else is going to set the deadlines for you.
You
it's
run at
very
your own
difficult.
pace if you're a professional and if you don't have a boss really. All right, we've got Siddharth Ganeriwala as part of the jury here, young entrepreneur. Siddharth, do you believe many young super achievers, the Brat Pack as they are called, are actually trapped by their own successes?
I totally agree with that, Sanjay, because I myself have been a victim of chronic fatigue syndrome for the last 2.5 years. But when I've gone to,
How did that happen, Siddharth?
I burnt myself out.
How?
I pushed myself beyond the limits. I also did not, I think, set my own goals and limits, and as Doc said over here, an unhealthy mind and an unhealthy body. Didn't give enough time for fitness, didn't give enough time to take off, breaks and things like that, which led to chronic fatigue syndrome. But now, after going through that whole fatigue progress, I understand that it's important to give yourself a break.
He's self-employed, but yet he suffered burnout. So where's the question of blaming the boss then?
No, I think in an organization, when you have to work with people, the boss becomes very important.
You were your own boss, isn't it?
Yes.
So that boss in you made you behave in a particular way. And you carried on doing it until you burnt out. And suddenly you realize, hey man, I'm a human being too. Not just the boss.
That's exactly the point I'm making, Doc, that, it's not the boss or, the employee,
That's
it's the
exactly
individual.
The point I'm making. The boss in you
What
made
he's saying is he's burning.
And I would love to hear an employee in his organization, literally to really see what he's done to the employee, like a burnt out
just
boss.
sorted it out for us. You really sorted it out for us, because that's exactly what we're trying to tell is that each one has a boss within himself.
Yeah.
So it's not the external boss which is driving you. It's your own internal boss which is driving you.
It's probably the competition in his case, but we've got HR professionals also. I want to ask you, this is not my allegation, this is what many corporate employees have been telling me when I was researching for this particular topic. They say the HR department is like the dirty tricks department. You pit one employee against the other, you play favorites, all with, of course, with the good intentions of increasing productivity. You want to get the maximum out of your employees. But then there is this element of divide and rule. Would you plead guilty?
See, when you say a fresher who's getting an offer letter with me, he says that you are my God who gave me a chance. Okay, the same fresher after 2 years whose employee says that my HR doesn't do anything for me. Okay, so it is something like it's not his own thing. Okay, it's again from the pressure of what we get or what we do. A pink slip issued or a laying off, it is done by an end user. A HR goes and says that, okay, today your work is done, you're off, that's it. So the person who curses, he curses me first. I have to face that thing. A boss sends me a report saying that, okay, this many people today off. So obviously it is something says to me that I have burned out, saying that, okay, every day I'm doing this. Okay, every day I'm sending the people out. So I am burned out saying that, okay, this is not the right thing which I want to do. I want to do something different.
Layoffs in times of recession, we're just recovering from that. But means the existing employees will have to take on more work on their plate and sometimes even unfamiliar tasks.
When there are recessionary times, then all companies have to buck up, because ultimately the companies are there to to service different stakeholders, the shareholders, the customers, the employees, and if the companies don't tighten their belts, the company is not going to be in existence. And I mean, that's what we've seen. India has withstood recession a lot better, a lot stronger than lots of companies in the West, and that is because of tighter controls. And so I mean, when times are tough, I think a lot of companies revisit their own organizations, see where things can, just look at higher productivity. And at the end of the day, it's competition. As more and more companies are coming into the same industry, there's more competition, pricing challenges, and it's the survival of the fittest.
In recession, times of recession, sir, they talk about cutting flab, but who brought about that flab in the first place?
Yeah, actually, there's a book called The Joy of Burnout by Dr. Globerman, Dina Globerman. And she says that basically the burnout is not the end. It's actually the beginning of a new era. It's the beginning of a new analysis where you kind of introspect.
It's like purgatory, is it? And then you get purged of all your...
Not really. I mean, it's basically a time for introspection, because who brought in that flab, as you said, in the first place?
It bounces off to the audience. How many of you actually have experienced burnout, or at least beginning to notice symptoms of burnout? Can you show of hands, please? Only a few. Who do you think actually driven you to this point? Did you set goals for yourself? Was it peer pressure? What actually led to this? Or did your boss, did the HR department actually push you?
I have my own goals. At the same time, my boss also pushes me to do some particular task, which I can't do in that particular time. So I'm totally burnt out because of the high pressure.
Okay. What about you?
Usually in corporate world, what happens is an individual is given targets each time of the year, say what we call as appraisals. Okay, so targets will be set for the next year or next half cycle. There are a number of reasons for demotivating that particular candidate and setting him a new target. At the end of the day, the individual doesn't get benefited anyway, but as a manager, he can only choose one among the herd of other employees to promote to the next level. So at the end of the day, if you see, it's a group of employees who get pushed down and one gets moved up.
Herded is what you're saying. You're saying herd of employees. So you feel that it's a herd mentality.
Exactly. See, if you in a corporate sector, if you see an employee, or typically in a software industry, if you see an employee is just like a battery. Okay, as long you use him as long as he can. Your manager
they expect Duracell batteries. They expect people to run, beyond that.
And they would compare batteries by batteries. Like, see, he is able to work the same task. You are not able to work.
Doc, I want to bring. See, not all fingers are the same. That's an interesting point. In that sometimes HR managers expect everyone to be the same, to have the same level of efficiency.
And especially when they don't have that level of efficiency too, isn't it?
Yeah, when they don't.
They push, and I mean, I've had cases who are coming up with, so like, there's this guy who does pretty well. Okay, so he's given a target within the team. He manages to do that task, but there is another employee who's lagging behind. So this guy gets picked up and said, okay, fine, do that also. So this guy says, am I being punished for being quick? So he says, look, I worked hard and I expected some real, a pat on my back and said, take 2 days leave. But instead I get landed some more work on my table.
Okay, we have another HR professional, not HR. Okay, do you believe that it's essential for people to take off days?
As you said, Sanjay, a Duracell, it is not a single Duracell. Now the double and triple Duracells are being expected.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think people are expecting rechargeable batteries now.
Rechargeable.
And I mean, I would like to stick to the point, unfamiliar task. I mean, that we feel that is the main reason of people getting burned out. Organizations take projects in the time of recession. They take projects which are not they're not suitable of taking the project, but still they take it. And it comes down the hierarchy and is given to the boss, who is responsible for splitting the job and giving to the peers. What happens is he has a brief idea of the project, he splits it, and then tells the guy to do the task which he's not familiar about. So obviously he is not given a kind of comfortable time of doing it, as he is not familiar about. He's given the same time, say 2 hours, but the project, the task might take 2 hours, but he's not familiar about. He's going to take 8 hours. So he's going to stay the entire night and finish the task, because at the right time of revision, he cannot take a risk of kind of neglecting the task.
That's a valid point, Dev. If you can answer that. See, at the time of recession, you can't afford to actually say no this much and no further.
First and foremost, I completely agree with the point you're making, that if you're taking on tasks that you don't know, if companies take on projects they're not familiar with, and they're just trying to shoot in the dark to get something done.
Is that a practice, or is it just a one-off case?
I think it is a question of what kind of companies. I think one differentiation which is very critical to make, when we talk about burnouts, is
you can't tar everyone on the same brush.
Yes, because bosses are certainly in a lot of ways responsible, because they are directly giving instructions and asking for work and output. At the same time, there are companies where this process has been designed and defined in a certain way, versus there may be very ill-run, poorly run companies where things are not well managed. So in those cases, you'll see much higher attrition, and it shows in the performance, financial numbers, attrition. It doesn't mean that they've taken these projects in recession, they'll do well. They will actually not, because at the end of the day, systems are not right. On the other hand, good companies take on projects aggressively, bid aggressively, but they have the right kind of training tools. And we are a BPO company with over 50% of our workforce working the night shift. That's the ultimate physical burnout you can talk about. And we won these awards, and I was at the ceremony in Bombay. And the person who actually gave the awards and gave the keynote speech was Mr. M.N. Singh, ex-police commissioner of Bombay. And when he started, he said that I'm surprised that I was invited to give this award, because when you talk of great place to work, and I look at my department, we do everything exactly the opposite of what you multinationals do. We pay people below average. We tell them to take bullets for which they are not even recognized. We give them arms which are 30, 40 years behind times.
And bulletproof jackets that
there
don't
is
work.
no Saturday, there is no off day, there is no Sunday. And then what is it that motivates them? Burnouts are in sports. In children, you get 90%. It's not good enough to get into a good university. So a lot of it is market driven. It's demand and supply. With a population of 1 billion and the single largest growing young population in the world, 90% is not good enough.
All right, we'll time for a short break now. When we return, we'll talk about whether it's collective team spirit or collective disillusionment, what I call the Hari Sadhu syndrome.